welcome back, Wind here. If you're using ServiceNow and want to automate processes without writing code, this video is for you. Today, we're diving into Flow Designer, step-by-step beginner's guide to essentially building out a flow. So, what is Flow Designer? Flow Designer is a low-code automation tool in ServiceNow that lets you create workflows using a visual interface. Instead of writing scripts, you can build logic using actions, triggers, and conditions. So, why use Flow Designer? So, it allows you to essentially automate repetitive tasks, reduce manual work, no coding requirement essentially, and it's easy to maintain and scale. So, let's talk about the key components of Flow. So, essentially, initially you have the trigger. The trigger is essentially when the flow starts. So you define what are the conditions that you want this flow to begin or to trigger. Then action. What happens next? What do you want the flow to actually do? You essentially add conditions, logic and decision making to essentially show how to control the flow execution based on specific criteria. And then subflows, which is essentially reusable flows that you could essentially put within your flows to essentially run and essentially scale for kind of the organization and the platform and tool. So how do you create a flow? So you follow these following steps and we'll go through a demo on how to build it, and we'll create a very simple flow to showcase this. Essentially, we navigate to Flow Designer, click New Flow, define a trigger, we add conditions, add actions like send notification, which is one we'll show today, configure the action details, and then save and activate the flow. So we're going to go very quickly through a example use case. So essentially what we're going to do when an incident is created with high priority, we're essentially going to send a notification to the incident management team, and this ensures faster response times and improved incident management. So let's go straight into the demo. So essentially what we're going to do is we are going to go into our Flow Designer. So let me just show how we got there. So over here we're going to go to Flow Designer. Okay, and then we essentially have our flows, and as mentioned we click New, click Flow, and essentially this will bring up this. So we give it a name, for example, just to showcase this, and it will bring up this following page. So I'm going to switch back to an existing flow I've created just to kind of walk it through. So essentially what we've done here is we created our flow name, so our priority incident notify incident management team. Essentially we've got our trigger. So what we've done is when an incident is created or updated where priority is 1 critical, so our trigger is essentially created or updated. We then go to our table incident, we add in our conditions. So I've essentially gone in and said, okay, find me priority, which is 1 critical. We've also got it to run the trigger only if not currently running. Now, there are a few options here, so you could do it once for each unique change, only if not currently running, or for every update. So it depends on what your use case is. If you only ever need it to run once, then this is a great one for you. But right now what we want to do is only if not currently running, because essentially what we wanted to do is run once it's created or updated. So we're kind of covering both of those use cases. Okay, so that's our trigger. We then go into our actions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to send a notification. Now there's a few ways you could send a notification on email. You could send an email. I'll just show what this looks like. So we've got send email, send notification, send SMS. Now you could do email and it lets you compose the email within the flow, but I think using notification, you can actually create a notification, add a styling template, and it just allows you to essentially use the platform a lot better. So I would essentially advise, if you're trying to send a notification rather than sending an email, do it via a notification. Okay, and then what we're going to do is, let's say it's table incident, and we're going to go and grab a notification. So I've essentially used an out of the box incident priority raised, and essentially what that looks like, so let's go to, is essentially this record. So we can see here it will say when sent, and this is essentially saying when triggered, so this means it will be called by a flow, right? Who will receive, so we add in our groups. Let me just refresh this. Okay, so we got our groups incident management, and then essentially what it will contain. So this is the template itself. Now, very basic template, not much styling added. I'll just showcase what this notification will look like. Essentially, it will say instant priority raised 3, and we can add more context and add styling, but just to showcase how we use flow using out of the box notification. Okay, now I want to showcase one thing. So when we go to who will receive, I added in the group incident management. So essentially, any members within this group here would essentially receive this notification. Okay, so let's go back to our flow. Okay, so now we're going to go into our action is to send notification, and there's one other action I've done just to make this a lot nicer and also showcase why doing this in a flow is very effective, because you can send a notification just by configuring a notification and having an event register and triggering it off. However, by doing it in a flow, you could actually do follow-up actions. For example, adding a work note to the incident to essentially say that this has essentially triggered a notification to the incident management team, has been sent out as it's a priority 1 incident, and it also provides the context of the flow into the work notes. Essentially, you can an admin could essentially see the flow that it was triggered, right? So let's showcase this working. Okay, so we're going to go to incidents now, and I'm going to create a new incident. Okay, so we're just going to call test priority incident. Okay, we're going to give it hi. We'll just give it a group. Let's use database because I know there's members in there. Okay, so I think that's basically it. So now I'm going to save this as a hi. Okay, so we can see here as we scroll down to the work notes, a notification to the incident management team has been sent out as it's a priority 1 incident. So we can see our flow is actually working. If I click on this record, it will essentially take me to the flow. So I click on that, I can see that the flow has been executed. It essentially sent a notification and it added a workflow. And this is essentially just the execution details. So now if I go back to incidents, and let me just okay, so let's go look at emails very quickly. So showcase. Okay, so create on today. So if we go back, right, okay, so this one 1002, as we can see here, preview email, right, incident, priority raised to 1 critical, as we can see. If we scroll up, we can see that it was sent to the incident manager. Great. Okay, so now let's do one more test. So okay, so we created a priority incident. What if we changed a existing incident from priority 5 to priority 1? So I'm just going to change the impact and urgency, and I'm going to add a work note. Okay, and I'm just going to save this. Okay, so as we see here, work note has been triggered and notification to the incident management team has been sent out as this is a priority 1 incident. Okay, we go back to our emails. Okay, and we can see here preview email. Essentially, same context. Great. So that's essentially us building the flow, right? So let's go back. Let's talk about some common mistakes to avoid. So essentially when you're building out a flow, once you create a flow, you do need to activate the flow. So essentially here, once you create it, clicking on this blue activation button here, if you don't click on that, your flow won't run essentially. So it's always good to ensure that when you're building it, look at that button and make sure that it's ticked. You will know it's ticked if you see this red deactivate button highlighted and this essentially kind of grayed out a little bit. Okay, adding unnecessary or redundant actions. So try and keep your flow as simple as possible because the more complexity you add to it, essentially, the more issues you may have. And essentially, if you're trying to add complex actions, just question if using subflows for flows is a good idea because you want to keep it as minimal as possible just to support to help support the performance of the flow. Not testing flows before deployment, so it's always good to test it out before you essentially deploy into production. And also using unclear naming conventions because you want to be very clear what the flow is doing. It has a precise action and precise criteria, so you want to make it very, very clear. Now, some best practices. So keep flows simple and focused, as we already mentioned. Use subflows for reusable logic. So if you got a very, very big flow, see if you could break it down into subflows if it makes sense to reuse that elsewhere. Um, Test flows with sample data. Use meaningful names for flows and actions, and monitor performance and execution. So whenever you're building a flow and you're designing it, just make sure it's running at quick. There's no kind of delay or hang time, and if there are, then essentially look at your flow and just work out the logic criteria. Is it casting a wide net? Do you need to kind of be way more specific? So just a few kind of examples and things I've seen when I'm building flows for organizations. When to use Flow Designer. So use Flow Designer when you're automating repetitive business processes, building workflows without scripting, integrating with other systems via Integration Hub. Again, you can use kind of the actions, and there's a lot of built-in ServiceNow spokes where you can essentially integrate using Integration Hub. Avoid using Flow Designer when there's complex scripting or logic is required. So you want to keep this as minimal as possible. So if there are a lot of touch points, it might be best to do this elsewhere. And performance critical operations then need optimization. So if it's a very, very long kind of query or it's going to take a lot of time, it might not be best to let a flow do it because it will essentially hang for quite a while. So it's always good to kind of take a look at performance when building out flows. In conclusion, to wrap up, Flow Design is a very powerful tool in ServiceNow. It enables you to automate workflows quickly and efficiently by leveraging the visual interface, which is very, very nice, reusable components. You can essentially build automation without any scripting. So I hope this helped. If you enjoy the video, please do like and subscribe for more ServiceNow tutorials. Right, thank you. Bye.